Welcome to today's Thriving Thursdays. We'll give you another minute or two to come in. So Barbara, you can relax for a minute or two because I know you're constantly on virtual demand at the minute.
That's fantastic. And I love that, being invited in the virtual space, and we're starting with a slow warming up. I love it.
So that, you know, actually today I thought what we should do is start with some music for you. And I was quickly looking, I thought, but the first thing that came to mind was virtual insanity. Okay.
I have very much appreciated that, honestly. But it's okay also if you want to start a bit singing yourself.
A bit of singing, yeah. I'm not sure anybody wants to hear me sing. But so let me now do our official welcome to today's Thriving Thursdays session or expert talk today with Barbara Covarrubias Venegas. I feel that if you're in LinkedIn, you're on Facebook, or you're anywhere in the virtual space, then you will have seen Barbara over the last couple of weeks and months. Barbara is, well, first of all, I have had the pleasure to know Barbara for many years. Barbara is a speaker, trainer, researcher, lecturer, author, and now describes herself most commonly, I think, as a virtual enthusiast. She's also the owner of Virtual Space Hero, which I'm sure you will have seen and heard about. Barbara, how are you doing, and how are you coping with the current virtual insanity?
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much for your lovely introduction, Edna. And it's really a pleasure being here, because you know that my whole journey into the virtual world somehow started with SIETAR Austria. Because when I became president or vice president, and when I joined more closely SIETAR Europe activities, that was the first time that I was involved in virtual teams. And now, like 8 years later, I founded the platform Virtual Space Hero. So it's really like a long journey that very much started with SIETAR Austria, and that's really cool. And also, well, we know each other because of we knew each other before. We knew each other before because we worked together at the university, the Corinth University of Applied Sciences.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, obviously, when you were president of SIETAR Austria, you did an absolutely amazing job. We know that you really brought the whole of SIETAR Austria to life. So we're doing a poor version of trying to follow in your footsteps. So we're still very happy to collaborate with you. I mean, we started off this series to sort of promote a growth mindset, you know, facing challenges around what was happening in the world. You have started this Virtual Space Hero project, which has seemed to come at an absolute timely time. So can you tell us, were you already planning that? Had you already, you know, I know you've been working virtually a lot, and we also collaborate, maybe we could talk about that later, but had you planned that, and did you find yourself sort of thrust into the whole virtual world now?
So what I always wanted to have is a job that is even more virtual than it was already, and more remote, so that I'm totally place independent. And I think I somehow took the decision last year when I came to Spain, when I worked much more from home than ever before, or remotely from wherever I was. And I enjoyed that really a lot, to be place independent, honestly. I loved it. And that's when I took the decision that I want my job to be more virtual. And funny enough is that when COVID happened, or it's not, of course, COVID is not fun, but when COVID happened, I was on a sabbatical leave, to say so, because I planned to have 4 months off. I was supposed to go to Brazil. Well, anyways, I ended up here in Spain, happy. And I was supposed to have a sabbatical leave, and COVID happened. And suddenly all that demand for virtual teaching, virtual coachings, virtual trainings was so huge, and there were so many people reaching out that it sort of moved so fast that I developed the idea of founding the platform Virtual Space Hero. And even it was really nice because a very good friend of mine, and she's sort of my social media hero, Khadija, we were working together for Vienna Global Leaders, and we had, I think, one brainstorm call about what to do, how should I organize myself. And after like 25 minutes, the idea of hashtag virtual space hero, the claim become a hero of the virtual space was born. So it went all as fast as the brainstorming, name finding, branding thing. The whole thing went very fast. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your learnings have been. So you were already working in remote environments previously, and now you're sort of in full-time remote work. What sort of learnings have you personally made over the last couple of months?
I think that's a super important question, because I'm working a lot virtually with students and with global virtual teams or local virtual teams. And what I'm always suggesting is to so that they keep their calendar under control, that they really block maybe the mornings for meetings or the afternoons for meetings, but they don't have the whole day long meetings. Because what we were experiencing now in COVID is that really I have the feeling that everybody was online 10 to 12 hours just in Zoom meetings. And I think the thing about keeping your meetings in one part of the day and the time for yourself, preparing, reflecting, working on content, whatever content it is super important. And I experienced, as many of us, an increase in virtual meetings that was just incredible. So that I took several measures, such as my calendar by default creates only meetings of 30 minutes. So I stopped that my calendar by default creates a meeting of an hour. My calendar meetings that are 30 minutes, my calendar schedules it automatically only for 20 minutes. So that in case I have a meeting afterwards, I have a 10 minutes break. And so I did use again technology to help myself in some way. And I think that worked pretty well now, but I still need to work on my calendar management, clearly.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm experiencing as being quite difficult is this fact of working from home, but being available all the time. And last night I was working quite late, and all of a sudden I had an email from a colleague who said, "Oh, I caught you. I see you're online. You should get off," which I thought was really lovely, actually, a way of also, getting me to think about, okay, is it really sensible to be working so late? But I'm thinking that it's very difficult to manage, this typical work-life balance, and I'm finding it's much more a work-life integration. So the calendar is one way of managing it. Is there anything else that you're doing, Barbara, to help with that?
I think that what I'm trying to do is to really a bit reflect and plan on my calendar for the next weeks always. And for example, if I know that maybe to start the other way around. So I look at my calendars on a weekly basis, or my calendar weeks on a weekly basis. But for me, the work-life integration is not really such a problem, because I personally, in the situation I don't define Saturday or Sunday for not being for work. Because sometimes I do take the Wednesday off and I go to the beach because there's a lovely weather. And that's a lot of freedom that I have and I can choose for myself that I really like. But I'm not taking enough advantage of it at this point in time. That's something I need to be very honest about. But if I work Saturdays, Sundays, very often I take a Tuesday or a Thursday off, maybe a thriving Thursday off even.
Wonderful. So we know to expect you then at 6 o'clock.
Exactly. I cut on beach time today to be here on time.
Oh, that's lovely. But we would be happy to have you from the beach as well, actually. That would be very nice, and also show that there's another side of life apart from these sort of office, virtual background spaces and virtual beaches.
You know that last year I did a lot of working from the beach. But we all know that those beach pictures are sort of also fake, because we have a light that doesn't really allow you to work. We have so much wind here in Valencia at the beach that I can't even have any phone calls there. And I do have a lot of calls. And so it makes it almost impossible if I'm not reading something. And that's usually what I take to the beach, sort of my reading things.
Oh, well, anyway, you're clearly thriving through this this virtual phase. Where do you see Virtual Space Hero going, or what is your ambition for it? And could you maybe also, because I know your work in the intercultural field is also incredibly predominant. So how do you see the role of culture in that virtual environment?
Virtual Space Hero is a platform for virtual enthusiasts and to-bes. So people who need or who are looking for information about the virtual space, is it training, remote working, virtual collaboration, find information there. And that's what we are working on now. Is it webinars, events, conferences, and is it blog articles about the topic of virtual collaboration? All those things are in built into are offered on the platform. But there is one very exciting stuff that I'm going to take very soon, and this is sort of a bit of the first premiere, or the first time I'm talking about it publicly, to say so. Virtual Space Hero goes into another phase, and it will be called Virtual Space Hero Production, because I'm currently getting together a team of people who I've been working with for the past years. Those are moderators, keynote speakers, people who are very well, have a lot of knowledge with technical platforms, different platforms, people who like visual or produce graphics or visuals during a conference, video makers, logo makers, web page designers, photographers. I have a photographer on board for this sort of virtual space hero production company. And what we want to do is we're going to provide the design and production of virtual events for companies, organizations, universities, small scale to very big scale.
Wow, that's fantastic. Congratulations. Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. I think that's something that, you know, will be, there'll be an incredible uptake on, because I think there's clearly going to be an increase also in the number of virtual conferences. I think people are realizing that it's also possible to do extremely valuable work online, organize bigger events, forums like the ones you're also organizing with the Vienna Global Leaders, and conferences. So, I mean, I think that's something that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, totally. And I think even maybe it's not going to be as much virtual as it is now, or as it was now, but virtual is here to stay. And so I think to think about how we can produce and design extraordinary and memorable events, that's going to be our claim, is of course super important. I even have personal trainers with me, so people who are going to do stretching, like really good stretching, not the ones that I'm doing, like hey, people move a little bit. That's what I'm doing usually in my event. But then I'm going to have very professional people doing stretching activities with the participants of our events.
Wonderful. So this is also, I guess, leading into maybe a little bit of self-promotion now, if we talk about the global case study challenge that we've been working together on for the past couple of years. But I think for me, one of the learnings out of developing the global case study challenge is also really the importance of taking into consideration these social elements, these very practical elements. And I know you've been doing a wonderful job of incorporating, you know, new ideas into any of the online work that you're doing. So you've mentioned our personal trainers, which is wonderful. We also, as part of the forum yesterday, it was quite nice to again have this sort of meditation moment, which is something that's popping up again and again. What other what else do you think is particularly useful if we consider the importance of developing teams, team spirit? What else comes to mind?
I think when we talk really about our global case study challenge also, so you find that www.globalcasesteadychallenge.com to do a bit of self-promotion for an award-winning teaching project, to be fair. And so you find all the information there. And I think what we do see in the Global Case Study Challenge over the past years, and that's also what we see in research, Athna, that's what we see when we work with organizations, trust building and team building in a global virtual teams is in a global virtual team, is it students, managers, team members, or whatever, and volunteers, is the most important. That means having, for example, on the agenda of a team meeting, a regular check-in. And I'm just thinking it's really funny because if we think about our team, so it's you, Athna, it's Sveta Buko from Slovenia, it's Ana Zinenko from Spain, from Barcelona joining. I think our check-ins, they took a little bit over last time, right? Because we usually have like 50% check-in time exchanging. And then we lack time for the whole organization of the Global Case Study Challenge. But what we do see is that our check-in, that really is the longest check-in I have in all my teams.
I think we're blocking, you're going from your 20 minutes automatically to your 40 minutes with those meetings.
But what we do see is that in our team, and we are a global virtual team, we have a very special dynamic in our team. That's what I believe. And maybe at some point we might reduce it a little bit from the 50% check-in and 50% working on a topic. But I think it's a really special collaboration. And coming back to what we learned from students is that we saw last year, particularly there were student groups who were distributing the tasks they had to fulfill in the 2 months of teamwork via WhatsApp, via Skype. They were not really sort of interacting or doing a team building activity or just getting to know each other with a video call. And we saw that those who did invest time on that, they did outperform the other teams, of course, because they had a much better understanding of what are the goals, what do they have to work on. They were much more committed to each other with deadlines, etc., etc. And I think that's why I think it's really lovely that this year our students have as an activity throughout the learning journey, as we designed it, they have a team building activity that they have to undergo, even if we're forcing them to do the team building. But I think that's really a very important element that we are introducing in our teaching project, in our teaching journey.
Yeah, well, I think we, as we saw from previous groups, it's important for us to also encourage the establishment of a team, because sometimes without the contact or without knowing the individuals, the priorities, where somebody's at in terms of their work, study, life balance, then it's quite difficult to just get the point of, you know, where the team building kicks off. So yeah, that's really lovely. I just wanted to add, because I see we're already at 17 minutes. If anybody has any questions, please, we're more than happy to take questions. We'll unmute you. I see in the comments we have a very positive comment, Barbara, about your teaching from one of the former students also. So that's lovely. Yes, so please either raise your hands, type something into the chats, and we'll be happy to unmute. Okay, Barbara, and I mean, one of the topics that you've been dealing with recently is also this question of diversity and inclusion, particularly on the back of what happened in the US, Black Lives Matters movements. And this is a topic, and we touched on it a little bit last week as well, and the whole topic of racism as one of these intercultural diversity topics. There was a little bit of criticism about how it's maybe not spoken about in enough depth. And I certainly feel that you're, you know, being extremely active and also, you know, raising awareness and creating this environment to talk about racism and other negative aspects that are associated with diversity and different intercultural components. So have you, how was your experience over the past couple of weeks of really engaging in that field?
I think I was myself a bit surprised how hard the experience was for me to reflect with myself on it. And that was really, I was really surprised about that, to be very fair. And I think we talked about it during our Global Case Study Challenge team meeting. I think the most important step for me was, and that was also the first time I sort of talked professional topics into more detail with my family. It's just, I'm doing so many things that sometimes it's overwhelming for other people to follow me. And that's why I also sort of I don't want to overwhelm anybody with my topics. And with my family, we talk about other things as well, of course. And but when the George Floyd incident happened, I did have a phone call with my mom and with my niece, and that was for me very valuable because it was the first time that I talked about something that is related to diversity inclusion with my mom and with my niece. And it was very interesting. For example, my niece, hearing her TikTok view on what is going on. So it was because I don't use TikTok, so it was really interesting to see that apparently on TikTok there are also meaningful videos in this case, because I've tried to log into TikTok, but it really scares me a bit, I must say. I logged out again.
Well, I also, because I took a webinar on TikTok, because I was encouraged, that this is something that's becoming really important from communities. And one of the pieces of information, and it was run by Nikki Ernst, who you might know, but it was this idea that it's very useful as a tool to generate communities between the ages of 18 and 50. Now, this was something that I wasn't sure about, because I was also familiar with TikTok from my nieces and nephews doing dancing videos, and I signed in and was also sort of put off and thought, oh, I'm not sure that I can use this. But I saw that a couple of people are actually using it also to create challenges, to sort of set up daily challenges. One of your speakers, Tayo Watson, yeah, exactly. He, for example, has his anti-bias challenge that he's doing on it. So, sure. I mean, I know it's something that it's one of these new social media forms that is difficult to get into, but I think it may also turn out to have a real value.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I also think that I was super impressed when I heard about Tayo being on TikTok, and I started following him, and I did find, of course, content that was interesting for me, or that I consider being meaningful or interesting. But I definitely think I don't have my TikTok, whatever appears there, I don't have it under control. So I need to look into settings or something.
Although, you know what, I think you would be amazing, because anything that you can do combining music and dance, regardless. That's where you did that, and maybe TikTok is the medium for you, because actually that's what it's set up as. So, Barbara, I see we've got a couple of questions and comments in the chat, so I will just ask them. So, first of all, a question from Karin about teaching. How do students get along with online teaching? Do they miss the face-to-face contact? And if yes, how do you cope with this need? And don't you think that having at least part face-to-face teaching would be more human? And Karen is a lecturer, and she's talking about also in relation to feedback that she's received currently from her students.
Yeah, I think that that, as we know, for global virtual teams, meetings or face-to-face meetings are important to build trust. So being part of a global virtual team that you never meet, it's not very likely to be a 100% success. It can be, but it's much more easy to connect and build trust if you meet at least once in a while. And I think the same once in a while during the semester, I would break it down a little bit, is the same what is happening with students. But to be very fair, I personally don't miss the personal contact with students, because I have a feeling that when I'm teaching, that we are able to connect in smaller groups very well. But I'm happy that the students can go back to university, they get face-to-face teaching there, because otherwise I think everybody would be super frustrated, which would make my life much harder. Yeah. And I think it's a nice combination, because also being virtual in a virtual classroom is easier for many people who are working, who have a family, and are studying part-time, and. Mm-hmm. So I think a combination is very good.
Mm-hmm. Barbara, this is a question that has we've come up a couple of times in the last couple of Thriving Thursdays. How do you gauge this question of sort of micro behaviors and working, without having as much sort of physical, visual contact with people, in terms of, analyzing also in a big group, where they are, responding to learners' needs, whether they're professionals or students. How do you cope with that?
I think that's, of course, the most difficult part, because the moment that I apply what I'm preaching, like looking always into the camera so that people feel engaged, yes, exactly, they feel that I'm talking to my students, The moment I do practice that, I can't see them. So I think I'm always what I'm doing is I'm trying always to do a combination of, while I'm talking, while I'm presenting, I'm really staring like crazy into the camera, which provides me probably with a headache, and it makes me more tired. It's much more exhausting, and we do know that. And the moment, but I also believe that it is very strong and powerful if you really look into the camera for the students themselves. And when I start engaging in a discussion, for example, I do look at the pictures, and in order to understand better what is going on. If I'm not talking, and if I, for example, start sharing something, or I ask them something to write in the chat, that's also a moment I use to screen on the faces, to say so. Yeah, I think that's my strategy to deal with it. But of course, it's very difficult, because the moment that you want to provide the other 100% of the attention, you don't see what is going on over there, because I'm staring at the camera now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I think this is also something that has a positive side, because I think one of the things that I've noticed is this idea of being able to really engage more people in a different format. So within a training or classroom environment where some people are less likely to engage in discussion, I find that they're much more likely to engage with formats like the chat function. There's much clearer feedback coming back with surveys, online surveys, etc. So I guess I know this sort of, the fact that we're not sitting co-located in one space can be problematic, but on the other hand, it's quite useful as well.
Yeah. And I think also to engage in the last time I was in a fun meeting with a company, and what that team was doing, for example, that's something I tried out with students as well, is they were starting to do at the beginning, after each break, a head massage. And of course that looked super nice. So Edna, if you try that out, if you try to give me a head massage. Go ahead. Well, that looks rather scary. You gotta go down and give me the head massage here. Yeah.
This is like trying to do the alphabet. Okay, good. I'll practice it for the next time.
Because the fun thing is, and I tried it once, when you have really a lot of students, that can look super nice. And that team, they were doing it when somebody was like raising the hand. I feel a bit tired. Can we go for a head massage? And they had that sort of meaning when the hands come up from the other person from above. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that. And it was really like a fun moment for that team. And with the students, it can also work to call them back into the class.
I mean, I also love the fact that you use music a lot, for the introductions, for these phases where people are moving from one session to another in a virtual environment. I think that's also something that everybody will start using when it comes to training.
I hope everybody's going to book my DJ virtual space.
Exactly.
We need to be part.
Exactly, we need to book your DJ. And then also think about the copyright, and whether we're allowed to use the music or not. That was something else I was thinking. If I start playing now virtual insanity as you come in, will I have copyright issues to deal with? Barbara, I know we're nearly at the end of time, but I know there are some very positive comments and words of appreciation in the feedback. There's also a comment about a virtual conference, and thank you very much. Christiana from the IACCM is here, and we're very happy to have this collaboration, of course, with the IACCM. Could you maybe just tell us a little bit about the conference, because there's still time to register, still time to get involved?
There's still time to register, and the good news is, starting from today onwards, the registration system works again, because we had some technical difficulties. And the conference will take place the 26th of June, starting at 2 p.m. We have a really cool conference platform, as it's going to be a bigger conference. We are using Hop-In, which is a very interactive way of organizing a conference, a very good platform. And the registration is €35. You can find the conference if you go to ICCM Global Virtual Conference and you type that into Google, you definitely will find it. And otherwise you can just contact me. We have 2 amazing keynote speakers, and it's all around global virtual teams. in business, in research, in higher education in general. We have very cool presenters doing a lot of virtual activities. We have academic researchers talking about their results, and we have two keynote speakers joining us. One is Erika Daric, joining from Aston University. She's going to talk about global virtual teams and how to deal with the border between private life and work life if you're working from home. So she's very much referring to the current situation. And the second keynote speaker is Dotun Adeoye, coming from Africa, and he's from Innovate Africa. He's going to talk about global virtual teams and his experience in an African context.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, so I'm also very much looking forward to it, and hopefully, yeah, you can spread the word. One very last question, some thank yous coming in, and then I'll let you go. We had a couple of questions about this idea of what books you would recommend that you've read recently, but I think we should turn it around for you and ask you, which virtual tools have you been engaging with recently? You've mentioned Hopin that you're using for the next conference. Are there any other virtual tools that you think also people who are training, you know, in a very interactive way or working in a very interactive way, interculturally, leadership wise, etc.? Any fun ideas you'd like to share with us that we can also try out?
Well, I do like what everybody is, many virtual trainers are using is Menti, for example, Mentimeter. It's Slido that we used yesterday, for example, in the Vienna Global Leaders event. That is also very nice. The moment that you have bigger groups, super useful. Slido, the Padlet. Padlet is a very nice online tool as well. Mural, M-U-R-A-L, or Miro, M-I-R-O. Those are all tools that you can use like a little bit like a whiteboard brainstorming, but also to design learning journeys. That works fantastic. And go ahead.
Miro, sorry, Miro is, and a Padlet is the other one, is also like a whiteboard type scenario.
In Padlet, exactly, you can create several how do you say, several like notes in that Padlet, for example. We sometimes use it as a brainstorming tool. If you have 10 breakout sessions, I'm creating a Padlet that each breakout session can use. And it's nice because then you can see what is happening in the other breakout sessions.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you. Oh,
one last thing. You know, something that is really fun, what I sometimes do with global virtual or with teams, with virtual teams, is if you Google it, you will find it. It's a virtual wheel, and it's a virtual wheel that you sort of turn around, and then there pops up a question, and you can personalize that to your team, to the questions, whatever you want, and it's a really fun way to play a team game.
Okay, very nice. Probably very good for icebreakers as well, to get everybody to know each other. Okay, great. So this has been a wonderful session. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for the invitation. And thanks so much for this amazing series on Tuesday and on Thursday. So amazing job, Ethna and board of SIETAR Austria at this point. I'm really super happy.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I should say a big thank you to the team, particularly Tamara and Hannah, who have been working a lot on, you know, creating all of the social media around it and doing all the designs and organizing the space. So, and they're really doing a wonderful job. So thank you very much to them. So I wish everybody then a lovely Thursday, whether it's morning, afternoon or evening, and see you hopefully next week for the last one before the summer. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. Have a lovely evening.